Snakes and Safety on Continental U.S. Department of Defense Installations. Warning: intentionally interacting with venomous snakes is a dangerous activity which can be mitigated with proper training and safety gear. This video provides only an introduction to the basic concepts necessary to mitigate a potentially dangerous situation, and is not intended to qualify individuals in snake handling. Additional training is recommended before handling any potentially dangerous species. The United States government, Department of Defense, their employees and contractors are not responsible for any injuries or deaths resulting from interactions with any potentially dangerous species, including venomous snakes. This video was developed by the Department of Defense Partners in Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Network. This video provides viewers with information about identification of dangerously venomous snakes of the U.S., common myths and misconceptions about snakes, general snake safety and awareness. DoD installations in the continental U.S. are known to support populations of 131 species of snakes. Of those, 27 species of venomous snakes are confirmed present on continental U.S. DoD installations. Approximately half of all the DoD installations in the continental U.S. with integrated natural resource management plans have at least one species of venomous snake confirmed present. Some installations have multiple species of venomous snakes. For example, located in Arizona, the Army site Fort Huachuca and the Air Force site Luke Air Force Base, Barry M. Goldwater Range East, each have 7 species of venomous snakes confirmed present. The venomous snake species that occur on DoD lands can be broadly divided into 2 categories: vipers and elapids. Vipers. There are 3 kinds of viper native to the United States: rattlesnakes, copperheads, and cottonmouths. All of the vipers of the United States have the following characteristics in common: a head significantly broader than the neck. A heat-sensing pit is present between and slightly below the nostril and eye on either side of the head. Pupils are vertically elliptical or cat-like in bright light, but more rounded in darkness. Hollow, retractable fangs used to conduct venom into prey or as an anti-predator defense. Rattlesnakes. There are 20 species of rattlesnakes confirmed present on 159 DoD properties. Rattlesnakes are native to most of the lower 48 states in the United States, absent only from northern Wisconsin to northwestern North Dakota and northeastern Montana. The area from northwestern Montana to northeastern Idaho and northeastern Washington, and portions of western Oregon and Washington, and some other few scattered, isolated areas. In spite of their diversity, all rattlesnakes have the following characteristics in common. The rattle. All rattlesnake species in the U.S. develop a rattle, a series of hollow interlocking keratin segments that, when vibrated against each other, produce a sound. The rattle is used to warn animals that pose a threat to the snake of its presence. However, the single rattle segment a rattlesnake is born with, called a prebutton, as well as the single segment that replaces it when the young snake first sheds its skin, called the button, are incapable of making noise on their own. Thereafter, the snake adds a new rattle segment each time it sheds its skin, and the rattle must have at least 2 segments to produce a sound. Blunt tail tip. Rattlesnake rattles are fragile, and though rattlesnakes protect them from damage by traveling with their rattles held up rather than dragging them on the ground, rattle segments do break. Rarely, the rattle may be lost entirely. However, even in cases such as these, rattlesnakes may still be identified by a tail that ends abruptly in a wide, blunt tip rather than gradually tapering to a sharp, slender tip. Reptile scales may be smooth or keeled. A keeled scale is characterized by a ridge running down its center, giving the reptile a rough appearance. In contrast, smooth scales do not possess ridges and appear shiny. Rattlesnake scales are keeled, with the keels being strongest at the middle of the body. Copperheads. Copperheads range from western Massachusetts, Connecticut, and southeastern New York, west through the southern 2/3 of Pennsylvania, southern Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, to Missouri and eastern Kansas, and south to Georgia and the panhandle of Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, east and central Oklahoma, and central and western Texas. The Copperhead is confirmed present on approximately 80 DoD installations and is the most common venomous snake species on DoD lands. In contrast to the blunt tail tip of rattlesnakes, the tails of copperheads slowly taper to slender points. Unlike rattlesnakes, copperheads do not possess rattles at the end of the tail. Copperheads are tan, brown, gray, or even pinkish snakes with darker markings on the back. When viewed from the side of the snake, these dark markings are shaped like Hershey's Kisses. When viewed from above the snake, these dark markings are shaped like hourglasses or butterflies. Some rare few copperheads do not have a body pattern. The common name of this snake comes from the color of its head, which may be orange, rusty, or copper in coloration. The top of the head lacks any pattern except for two small dark spots in the middle. The color of the head is usually lighter below the eye than above it. A dark stripe often runs from behind the eye to the back of the head. Copperheads possess keeled scales, though the keels are less pronounced than in most rattlesnakes. Young copperheads have tails with yellow or green tips, used to lure prey into striking distance. The coloration fades to brownish as the snake ages. Cottonmouths. Cottonmouths, also known as water moccasins, range from southeastern Virginia south along the Atlantic coastal plain to the northern Florida Keys, west along the Gulf coastal plain to central Texas, and north to eastern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, southern Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, western Kentucky, and western Tennessee. Cottonmouths are confirmed present on approximately 65 DoD installations. Similar to copperheads, the tails of cottonmouths slowly taper to slender points and do not possess rattles at the end of the tail. When disturbed, cottonmouths will often freeze in place or attempt to flee. If the threat does not move away or escape is impossible, cottonmouths may coil, flatten the body, vibrate the tail, and attempt to strike. Most famously, they may display their namesake by gaping the mouth and display its inner white-pink coloration. Mouth gaping may be done from a coil or while the snake is stretched out on the ground. Cottonmouths may be black, dark brown, or olive in coloration, with a pattern of darker, broad, wavy bands along the back. Young cottonmouths are lighter in coloration with more distinct patterns. As cottonmouths age, their pattern fades until it becomes absent in old adults. On the head, cottonmouths may have a broad, dark cheek stripe with a light border. They may also have dark bars on the tip of the nose and on the lower jaw. Similar to copperheads, cottonmouths possess keeled scales that are generally less pronounced than in most rattlesnakes. Like copperheads, young cottonmouths have tails with yellow tips, used to lure prey into striking distance. The yellow coloration fades as the snake ages. Elapids. There are two kinds of elapid native to the United States: coral snakes and sea snakes. All elapids of the United States have the following characteristics in common. Unlike vipers, the pupils of elapids are round. Elapids possess hollow, permanently erect fangs at the front of the mouth. Coral snakes. There are 3 species of coral snake native to the United States, but all share features that aid in their identification. We will cover them as a group. In the United States, the coral snakes range from south-central Arizona to southwestern New Mexico. The second section of the coral snake range in the United States is from southeastern North Carolina southward mostly on the coastal plain through Florida and west through central and southern Georgia, Alabama, and southern Mississippi through Louisiana, southwestern Arkansas, and southwestward through southern Texas. 27 DoD installations have confirmed populations of coral snake species. All U.S. coral snake species have the following characteristics in common. The body pattern consists of repeating bands of 3 colors: red, yellow, or white, and black over most of the body, with the exception of the tail. Some rare few coral snakes may possess differences in their colors and patterns in which the order of the color sequence is changed or portions of the pattern are absent. The tails of U.S. coral snakes lack the red banding present on the rest of the body. The red, yellow, and black bands on U.S. coral snakes completely encircle the body. The head and snout are black, though in some cases only the front of the head is black, ending just behind the eyes. Yellow-bellied sea snake. The yellow-bellied sea snake is primarily restricted to warm tropical and subtropical ocean waters. In the U.S., it occurs in the Pacific Islands, including Hawaii, and from Ventura County south in coastal California. Observations of this snake are uncommon in the U.S., but there have been multiple observations in waters off Southern California in recent years. The most distinctive feature of the yellow-bellied sea snake is its flattened oar-like tail, which distinguish it from all other snakes in the U.S. The tail is compressed from side to side and about 10 times taller than it is wide. Yellow-bellied sea snakes have a sharply contrasting, two-toned body coloration. The back is black, olive, or brown, while the belly is yellow, cream, pale brown, or gray. The tail has a variable pattern of light and dark reticulations or spots. Unlike other U.S. snakes, the nostrils of the yellow-bellied sea snake are valved and positioned on top of the snout rather than at its tip. Now, we will go through some examples of snakes that are commonly encountered and difficult to differentiate from one another. These examples are not comprehensive of all confusing species in the U.S., but should provide viewers with useful tools in identifying the venomous snakes of the U.S. from their harmless counterparts. Water snakes versus copperheads and cottonmouths. Water snakes and cottonmouths both live semi-aquatic existences and are often found in the same areas. Water snakes may also be similarly colored and patterned to cottonmouths and copperheads, and can be vigorously defensive when disturbed. The following characteristics can be used to differentiate harmless water snakes from venomous cottonmouths and copperheads. The head. While the bodies of water snakes, cottonmouths, and copperheads may appear similar, studying the head of the snakes is helpful in telling them apart. The eyes of water snakes have round pupils in contrast to the vertically elliptical pupils of cottonmouths and copperheads. Water snakes also lack the distinctive facial pits of cottonmouths and copperheads. The shape of the head is often used as a shorthand way of differentiating vipers, like cottonmouths and copperheads, from harmless snakes like water snakes. This technique can sometimes be useful, but can also be misleading. Snakes have highly flexible jaws, and a water snake can spread its jaws horizontally, making its head appear triangular in shape. When disturbed, water snakes may combine their jaw-spreading behavior with coiling, wriggling of the tail, and striking in much the same way as cottonmouths and copperheads. However, water snakes do not gape the mouth open for extended times, as cottonmouths do. When swimming, cottonmouths inflate the lung and carry much of the body floating at the surface of the water. While water snakes swim, the head and neck are elevated to the surface, but the rest of the body is submerged. Rattlesnake versus rat snake. Rat snakes have round pupils and lack the distinctive facial pits of vipers. Even when spreading the jaws and flattening the head to a triangular shape, a rat snake's neck is still relatively thick in relation to its head than in vipers. In addition, the typical posture of these snakes can differ. Rat snakes often arrange their body into a series of many short kinks that give them a wrinkled appearance, even when stretched out. This behavior is unknown in rattlesnakes. Rat snakes can be vigorously defensive when disturbed. They may coil, layering multiple loops of the body on top of each other in a behavior called body bridging, vibrate the tail, and strike. During tail vibration, rat snakes hold the tail along the ground and, if it contacts dried leaves or other loose materials, the motion may produce a sound reminiscent of a rattlesnake's rattle. Rattlesnakes typically hold the tip of the tail upright and perpendicular to the ground when rattling a warning. Hognose snake versus rattlesnake. Hognose snakes are sometimes confused with rattlesnakes due to similarities in color, pattern, and body shape. However, hognose snakes have the namesake large, upturned scale at the tip of the nose that give them a pig-like appearance, lacking in rattlesnakes. In addition to their unique nose, hognose snakes can be distinguished from rattlesnakes by their rounded pupils and lack of a rattle and facial pits. Bull snake, gopher snake, and pine snake versus rattlesnake. Bull snakes, gopher snakes, and pine snakes may superficially resemble the rattlesnakes that live in the same area, particularly in coloration and pattern. However, these snakes lack a facial pit and a rattle on the end of the tail, and their pupils are round. When disturbed, bull snakes, gopher snakes, and pine snakes may coil and rear up, flattening the head, spreading the jaws, vibrating the tail, and striking. They also have the ability to make a loud, strident hiss that may sound similar to the rattling of a rattlesnake rattle. However, when these snakes vibrate the tail, they keep the tail against the ground, while rattlesnakes will hold the tail straight up, perpendicular to the ground. Even when the jaws are spread, bull snakes, gopher snakes, and pine snakes have a relatively narrow head and thick neck compared to the wide head and narrow neck of rattlesnakes. Night snake versus rattlesnake. Here, things can become somewhat tricky. In most cases so far, the vertically elliptical pupils of vipers were useful in distinguishing them from harmless snakes. However, night snakes are harmless snakes that have vertically elliptical pupils. This is why it's important to rely on multiple identifying characteristics when attempting to identify a snake as harmless or venomous. While their eyes may appear similar to a viper's, night snakes lack the distinctive facial pits of a viper. Unlike rattlesnakes, night snakes do not possess a rattle at the end of the tail. The scales of night snakes are smooth, lacking the keels characteristic of copperheads, cottonmouths, and rattlesnakes. Their smooth scales cause night snakes to appear shiny in bright light, while vipers appear relatively dull or dusty under similar conditions. Milk snakes, scarlet snakes, and long-nosed snakes versus coral snakes. Milk snakes, scarlet snakes, and long-nosed snakes are harmless red, yellow, or white, and black patterned snakes that may be confused with coral snakes. Milk snakes may be blotched or banded, with the banded variety being most often confused with coral snakes. In milk snakes, the red bands are adjacent to black bands, while the red bands are adjacent to yellow bands in coral snakes. Scarlet snake patterns are not arranged in complete bands encircling the body, as in coral snakes, but instead consist of a series of blotches on the back. In addition, the scarlet snake's pattern has red touching black, rather than red touching yellow, as in coral snakes. The face of the scarlet snake is red and white, while the faces of coral snakes are black. While long-nosed snakes do have black heads, as in coral snakes the front of the head is entirely black, while long-nosed snakes have cream or white speckling around the eyes, nose, and mouth. While similar in color to a coral snake's, the long-nosed snake's pattern consists of a series of blotches that fail to reach the snake's belly, rather than complete bands encircling the body, as in the coral snake. Venomous snake myths. Dangerous hybrids. Although many of us learned in school that different species cannot hybridize, scientists now know that nature is a lot messier than that, and it sometimes happens. That said, this does not mean that any two species can reproduce. They need to be closely related. There are a few stories out there about different kinds of dangerous snakes hybridizing, but it is safe to call most of them myths. Bull snakes often shake their tails when they are feeling threatened. As a result, they can be mistaken for rattlesnakes. Perhaps this is why some people think these two kinds of animals are hybridizing, but there's no way this could happen. These two snakes are in different families and could not successfully reproduce. Python plus cottonmouth. Burmese pythons are from Asia, but are now established in southern Florida thanks to escapees from the pet trade. There's some concern that these pythons hybridize with local cottonmouths, but these animals are not closely related, and there's no way this could happen. Are babies more dangerous than adults? There is no compelling evidence that rattlesnakes learn how to control the amount of venom they inject in each bite, and it just doesn't matter anyway. Big adult rattlesnakes can hold more venom than small baby rattlesnakes, and therefore have the potential to be more dangerous in most situations. Even just a fraction of an adult snake's venom can be more than a baby has overall. Fall into cottonmouth den. Watch your step and be careful about where you put your hands and feet, and you will not need to worry about falling into a den of cottonmouths. It is rare for many cottonmouths to congregate together for any reason, although sometimes this happens in the northern portions of their range, as there are few good places to spend the winter. In general, these will be in small tunnels and rock crevices. You could not fall into those if you tried. Breeding ball. In the mating season, harmless water snakes can form breeding balls as many males swarm females and try to reproduce. Cottonmouths do not do this because they have a different strategy. Usually two males will fight over a female and then mate one-on-one. Snakes will chase you or fall into your boat. There are a lot of myths out there that make snakes seem a lot more dangerous than they really are. Think about it this way. Why would a snake start a fight with another animal that is 100 times bigger? There's nothing to gain. If a snake is feeling threatened, it will usually try to crawl away or rely on its camouflage to hide. If a snake feels it cannot escape, then it may get defensive and coil up. This is probably why some snakes have a reputation for being aggressive when they are actually just being defensive. In general, if you give a snake a chance to get away from you, it will. Rattlesnakes don't swim. Most snakes can swim, including rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes may not dive as well as cottonmouths and water snakes, but they're pretty good at puffing themselves up and swimming on top of water. Snakes can't strike when in shed. Snakes probably can't see very well when they are about to shed their skin. But this does not mean they are helpless or harmless. A snake can still bite and strike if their vision is cloudy, even if their accuracy may be lower than usual. Rattlesnakes always rattle before striking. Though rattlesnakes often rattle the tail in warning before they attempt to strike, this is not always the case. Individual snakes may rattle but not strike, strike before they rattle, or strike but never rattle at all. Rattlesnakes are losing their rattles. Sometimes rattlesnakes rattle, and sometimes they do not. The snake's behavior in any situation depends on a number of different factors, probably including things such as threat level and temperature. In addition, sometimes individual rattlesnakes have unique personalities and behaviors that make them more or less likely to rattle than others. There is currently no evidence that rattlesnakes are losing their rattles or rattling less because of people or other predators, such as hogs. General snake safety practices. Use of the following equipment is recommended to reduce the risk of injury or death when working with or around venomous snakes in the U.S. Wearing sturdy, closed-toed shoes, preferably those that cover the ankle, along with long, loose pants that cover the top of the boot, is an important first line of defense to protect the lower leg from snake bite. It is recommended that snake gaiters, or chaps, are worn over the leather boots and pants to further secure the wearer against snake bite to the lower leg. If handling a snake is deemed necessary, the snake should not be handled with the hands or other body parts. Instead, handle the snake using proper implements, such as snake tongs or hooks. When encountering a snake, it is important to remain calm. If the snake is in a location where it can be avoided, it is best to leave the snake alone. Give the snake space and time to leave on its own. If the snake is in an unsafe situation and needs to be moved, call a professional to remove the animal. Watch the snake closely and from a safe distance until the professional arrives. For more information about snake safety and handling, DoD Park has also produced a snake safety and handling video as part of this educational series. Not all snake encounters require direct intervention. If a snake is in a natural area, the situation is not necessarily dangerous, and the snake should be left alone. However, there are situations in which a snake may be posing a danger to people and to itself, such as when in a military housing or training area. In these situations, it is appropriate to contact a professional to remove the animal. These situations include, but are not limited to, a snake is under a vehicle. This situation is highly unsafe for people that attempt to enter or exit the vehicle, as well as the snake, as it runs a high risk of being struck when the vehicle moves. A snake has gained entry to a facility or home. Snakes sometimes enter man-made structures and subsequently become trapped within them and are unable to leave on their own. The snake in this situation is a danger to people and itself and should be removed. Care should be taken to identify how a snake was able to enter the structure, and action should be taken to prevent additional snakes from coming inside. When are snakes active? In most of the United States, snakes are generally most active March through October. However, considerable variation in activity period exists between different areas, and in many areas snakes may be encountered year-round. Snake activity is affected by factors including elevation, climate, topography, and habitat. We recommend that you check with a local biologist for more information relating to snake activity in your area. Chances are you live or work in areas where venomous snakes may be found. Please remember to not reach or step where you cannot see. Thank you all for your service to our country. The following organizations were happy to assist in this educational production.